So we start out chapter 6 in section 6.1 with ratios, proportions, and geometric mean. So we're going to learn how do you write and solve proportions and what proportions are all about in geometry. So a ratio of A to B says if A and B are two numbers or quantities and B does not equal 0, then the ratio of A to B is, zoom in, A over B as a fraction. We can also write it with A, then a colon, and then B. We can also say A to B. Okay, so all these are ways to do A over B. And I should add one more. There's A divided by B. Okay, those are the different ways to write a ratio. A proportion is an equation that states that two ratios are equal. So for example, A over B equals C over D. This is called a proportion because there's an equal sign and there's two ratios. All right, the means and extremes. In the proportion A over B equals C over D, B and C are the means. Okay, so B and C are called the means. A and D are called the extremes. So if you ever hear me say, what are the means, I'm talking about the things in the red spots. If I ever say, what are the extremes, I'm talking about the things in the blue spots. And then the geometric mean is the positive number x that satisfies this proportion. A over x equals x over b. And where this comes from is if you cross multiply, you get x squared equals a times b. Right here. When you cross multiply, that's what you'll get. And if you solve it, you'll get x equals the square root of a times b. So the geometric mean is setting a proportion up like this and then solving for x. Okay? So example 1, it says simplify the ratio, and 1a gives us 76 centimeters to 8 centimeters. Another way to write this would be 76 over 8. Both of these are divisible by 4. So really, we're just trying to reduce the fraction. And you would get 19 over 2. This ratio reduced down to 19 centimeters to 2 centimeters, or 19 over 2. So just reducing the fraction. Part B, we have 4 feet over 24 inches. So what we have to do is either turn the feet into inches or the inches to feet. So 12 inches equals 1 foot. So in our ratio, I'm going to keep the top as 4 feet. On the bottom, 24 inches is equal to 2 feet. So the bottom is going to be 2 feet. And we want to make sure that the label is the same. So feet and feet. Okay, you see in the beginning it was feet and inches. We want them to be the same. So we changed 24 inches into 2 feet. And that came from here. 12 inches is 1 foot. So when we reduce this, these are both divisible by 2. 4 divided by 2 is 2. 2 divided by 2 is 1. So it's 2 feet over 1 foot. So that ratio reduces down to 2 over 1. Okay, then we have a checkpoint. I'll run through the checkpoint with you. 4 meters to 18 meters. Can be written like this. Both of these are divisible by 2. When you divide by 2, you will get 2 meters to 9 meters. Okay, you could write it as a fraction, or you can write it with a colon like this. It's the same thing. Right, and then number 2, we have 33 yards to 9 feet. This one, we know that 1 yard is equal to 3 feet. So we can either change the yards into feet or the feet into yards. So if 1 yard is 3 feet, if we want to change 33 yards into feet, we would multiply it by 3, and you would get 99 yards. 99 feet to 9 feet. So we had to change yards to feet. We got 99 feet to 9 feet. And then we would reduce this. These are both divisible by 9. You would get 11 feet to 1 foot. So this is what that ratio would simplify to, 11 feet to 1 foot. We scroll down. You are painting barn doors. You know that the perimeter of the doors is 64 feet and that the ratio of length to height is 3 to 5. So perimeter is 64 feet, and we know our ratio of length to height is 3 to 5. So step 1 is write expressions for length and height. So length to height is 3 to 5. We don't know what the length and the height is, but we do know that for every 3 feet the length is, the height is 5 feet. So we could write down 3x to 5x. Therefore, length equals 3x and height equals 5x. So depending on what x is, that's how we find out the length and the height. If x is 1, it's 3 feet and 5 feet. If x is 2, the length would be 6 feet and the height would be 10 feet. So it depends on what x is. So in step 2, we're going to set up and solve the equation. So we have these doors. We have height, length, and length. So we know that the perimeter is equal to 2L plus 2W. And that equation is actually from earlier this year. But if we found the perimeter, there's 2 L's and 2 H's. So actually, I just realized I screwed up. It's not 2W, it's 2H. 2L plus 2H. So the equation for perimeter is 2L plus 2H. Step 3, we're going to take the perimeter that we know, which is 64, and we're going to plug that in for P. So 64 equals 2 times the length. The length is 3x. Plus 2 times the height. The height is 5x. So 64 equals 2 times 3x plus 2 times 5x. We end up with 64 equals 6x plus 10x. So 64 equals 16x, because we combine the x's. 6 plus 10 is 16, and then divide by 16. X equals 64 divided by 16 is 4. So x equals 4. So what that means is the length is 3 times 4. So the length equals 12. And the height, which is up here, is 5 times x, so it's 5 times 4. So the height is 20. And these are both in feet. So we found the length, we found the height, and now we got to find the area, because it asks us to find the area of the doors. So another equation is area equals length times height. So the area is 12 times 20. And 12 times 20 is 240 feet squared. So we found the length, the height, and the area. And I just want to point out this all started with using the ratio of 3 to 5. And 3 to 5 we wrote as 3x to 5x. And that's how we were able to write the equations out and solve for x. Okay, I'm going to run through the checkpoint. So the perimeter of a rectangle is 21 feet. So P equals 21. And the ratio of the length to width is 5 to 2. So length to width is 5 to 2, which is 5x to 2x. And that means the length is 5x. And the width is 2x. And we want to find the length and the width. So we know what L equals, we know what W is. The equation is P equals 2L plus 2W. Because in your rectangle you have 2 L's and 2 W's. So when we substitute in, we get 21, because that's what perimeter is, equals 2 times 5x plus 2 times 2x. So 21 equals 10x plus 4x. So 21 is 14x divided by 14. X equals 21 over 14 is 1.5. So you found x. Now we got to plug it in. The length is 5 times 1.5. So the length is 7.5. The width is 2 times x. So 2 times 1.5, which means the width is 3 feet. So we found the length and the width because we were able to find that. And again, just want to point out 5 to 2 is the ratio, so we wrote down 5x to 2x. Okay, example 3, the measures of the angles of ABCD, or triangle BCD. So in a triangle, we have B, C, and D. And they tell us the extended ratio is 2 to 3 to 4. What that means is 2x, 3x, and 4x are what we're going to call the angles. So basically, we just put an x with those. And remember, the angles add to 180. So if we're going to solve this, we would do 2x plus 3x plus 4x equals 180. So we got to solve for x. We get 9x equals 180. Let's get x by itself by dividing by 9. X equals 20. So we solve for x. Again, we just put an x with each of these in the ratio, and then those add up to 180. So our first angle is going to be 2 times x, so 2 times 20, which is 40 degrees. The second angle is going to be 3 times x, so 3 times 20, which is 60. And the third angle is 4 times x, which is 4 times 20, which would be 80. So the three angles are 40, 60, and 80. Okay. For the checkpoint, we would do it the same way. It would be 1x plus 4x plus 5x equals 180. Because again, it says the triangle's angles have a ratio of 1 to 4 to 5. I'm going to go kind of fast here, but if we combine the x's, we would get 10x equals 180. Get x alone by dividing by 10, so x equals 18. And then the angles are 1 times 18, 4 times 18, and 5 times 18. And again, it comes from this picture. The picture would be 1x, 4x, and 5x. And all of those angles add to 180. So add them up to 180. The angles would be 18. 4 times 18 is 72. 5 times 18 is 90. So those would be the angles. 18 degrees, 72 degrees, and 90 degrees. Okay. Property of proportions. So we have the cross product property, which says in a proportion, the product of the extremes equals the product of the means. All this means is when you cross multiply, they're going to be equal to each other. So when you cross multiply, it's going to be A times D equals B times C. Okay. So in this case, in the example below, this would be 2 times 6 equals 3 times 4. So notice both of these are 12. So they're going to be equal to each other. 2 times 6 is 12, 3 times 4 is 12. And that's all this is saying. So this is why we can do cross multiplication. And we get to an example. Example A, if we cross multiply, we get 4 times x equals 3 times 16. 3 times 16 is 48, so 4x equals 48. If we divide by 4, we get x equals 12. You look at part B. When we cross multiply, it's 2 times x plus 1 equals 3 times x. Now this is definitely a little trickier. When we cross multiply, 2 times x plus 1 is 2x plus 2 equals 3 times x. So we actually had to distribute the 2. And then get all the x's together by subtracting 2x, and we get 2 equals x. Okay. To save time in the video, I'm going to skip the checkpoints because it's cross multiplication. They're similar to the ones we just did. And then I'm going to slide down to the real world problem. It says you want to find the total number of rows of boards that would make up 24 lanes at a bowling alley. You know that there are 117 rows in 3 lanes. Find the total number of rows of boards that make up the 24 lanes. So what we're going to do is write a proportion and solve. So we just got to think, what does our fraction going to look like? Let's do rows on top, and we'll do lanes in the bottom. So rows of boards and lanes in the bottom. So they tell us 117 rows is 3 lanes. So 117 over 3. We want to find the number of rows. So the part that we don't know is the rows, so I'm going to put an X on top. Find the rows that make up 24 lanes. So x over 24. So we're writing 2 fractions that we can now cross multiply and solve. We would get 3x equals 117 times 24. So 3x equals 2,808. And then we divide by 3 to get x equals 936 rows. So if there's 24 lanes, we would need 936 rows of boards. Okay, I will do the checkpoint because I want to show one more example of this. A small gymnasium contains 10 sets of bleachers. You count 192 spectators in 3 sets of bleachers, and the spectators seem to be evenly distributed. Estimate the total number of spectators. So what we're going to put down is bleachers over spectators. I'm going to write down 2 fractions. So 10 sets of bleachers is what the gym contains. There is 192 spectators in 3 sets. So 3 sets of bleachers and 192 spectators equals, we want to know how many spectators will be in 10 sets of bleachers. So 10 goes with bleachers, X goes with spectators because we're trying to find out the spectators. So we cross multiply. 3 times X equals 10 times 192. So 3X equals 1920. To get X alone, we would divide by 3. So X would equal 1920 divided by 3 is 640. So roughly, they could fit 640 spectators in the 10 sets of bleachers. And then last example is find the geometric mean of 16 and 48. To find the geometric mean, all this means is the means are here and here. So you put your x's where the mean is, and you put 16 and 48 in the other spot. So we're trying to find the geometric mean. You put x in the spot of the means, you put 16 and 48 in the other spots. When we cross multiply, x times x is x squared, and that's going to equal 16 times 48. So we will get x squared equals 768. And then to get x squared alone, you take the square root. So x equals 27.7. And same thing for checkpoint. If we're finding the geometric mean, you put x in the spot of the means, 14 and 16 go in the other spots. Then we cross multiply. X squared equals 14 times 16. So x squared equals 224. And then we take the square root. And the square root of 224 is 14.97. So that is how we find the geometric mean. Long section of notes. If you have to, you can fast forward. If I talk too fast, you can pause and replay it. I apologize that this one is a little longer than normal, but we got everything through, and I will see you all in class.